Join me as I put Saturn to the test and see if it really can float in water. Let's find out if it defies gravity. Saturn, the second largest planet in our solar system, has a fascinating property that has sparked intense debate. It can float in water, at least in theory. This phenomenon is based on the principles of density and buoyancy, where an object less dense than its surrounding fluid will float, while a denser object will sink. The concept of gravity and buoyancy is often misunderstood, particularly when it comes to gas giants like Saturn. Many people assume that Saturn's massive size and weight would automatically make it sink in water, but that's not the case. The density of an object is what determines its ability to float or sink, not its size or weight. Saturn is primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, which are much less dense than water. This means that if Saturn were somehow magically placed in a massive bathtub, it would indeed float. The misconception about gravity and buoyancy stems from our everyday experience with objects on Earth. We're used to seeing heavy objects sink and light objects float, which leads us to assume that weight is the determining factor. However, weight and density are two different things. Density is the ratio of an object's mass to its volume, and it's this ratio that determines whether an object will float or sink in a given fluid. Another misconception is that Saturn's gravity would somehow counteract its buoyancy, pulling it down into the water. The characteristics of Saturn are quite unique, with its gas giant composition and extremely low density. The planet is mostly made up of hydrogen and helium, with a density of about 0.687 grams per cubic centimeter, which is much less than the density of water, which is approximately 1 gram per cubic centimeter. This huge difference in density is what allows Saturn to float in water, at least in theory. If we were to compare Saturn to other planets like Earth or Jupiter, we'd see that their densities are much higher, which is why they wouldn't float in water. If we were to visualize Saturn floating in water, we could use an analogy like a beach ball in a swimming pool. The beach ball is less dense than the water, so it floats on the surface. Similarly, Saturn is less dense than water, so it would float if it were placed in a large enough container. The key points to remember are that Saturn's density is much lower than water, which allows it to float, and that gravity and buoyancy are two separate forces that act on an object's mass and density, respectively. Saturn's unique properties make it a fascinating planet to study, and its ability to float in water is a remarkable phenomenon that challenges our everyday assumptions about gravity and density. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts on Saturn and its fascinating properties. And if you want to learn more about planetary science, be sure to check out my next video.